electric vehicles are not clean by
Yep.
nature.
Europe is losing the battery race. Are we losing the battery race, Lucas?
For now, it seems so.
If everything is clean within the value chain in the production, if you're using clean electricity, it's able to reduce emissions by 70%. That's having 10% of overall 51 billion tons that we need to be able to reduce by 2015. And that's a huge amount.
Yeah.
You're listening to Climate Conversations with Divya, brought to you by Purple Fix Productions. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Climate Conversations, and welcome our new guest, Lucas. Hi, Lucas. How are you doing?
Great. Happy to be here, Divya.
Why don't we start with a little bit of introduction? What do you do, Lucas?
Yeah, of course. So I'm senior consultant at Hello Tomorrow, which is a global organization fostering the development of deep tech companies.
Yeah, because I'm hoping this conversation is more accessible to everybody. When we say deep tech, could you sort of explain deep tech to a 5-year-old? What is exactly
True, yeah.
tech? Why is there a separate term for deep tech?
There's actually a misconception, or people don't use it for the same. So you're right. I should have started with this. So when we use tech, everybody refers to digital technologies, more or less AI, IoT devices, web apps, this kind of thing. So their characteristic of deep tech is that it's rooted in science or engineering. It has the ambition to solve strong challenges that we have in the world. Whether it's in environment, energy, in food supply, healthcare, we are talking about that. You don't really have deep tech companies trying to help people sell faster their softwares. This is tech, right? Not deep tech. And deep tech, because it's rooted in science tries to, provide solutions to big problems of humanity. Right. So deep tech companies also are always in that sphere, and they also characterize usually with much longer time of development. They are more capital intensive, which is why it stayed quite niche at some point. But right now we are seeing a big development. We are seeing strong return also of investment, sometimes higher than in tech. I invite everyone to see the last report of Hello Tomorrow about that, because deep tech are showing better results and from an investor point of view.
I'd love to get that report.
Yeah.
Send me a link later.
So that's deep tech, So we are taking science to market. We're solving big problems, and we are doing it in an industrial perspective.
Right. Oh, that is super cool. Thank you for explaining that.
We're probably going back to that later. And I'm specialized in energy-related topics through the lens of new emerging technologies. So I'm more looking at the future 10, 15 years and what's coming out of research labs and what can provide some innovations or breakthroughs for the future.
That is pretty cool. I could easily say you're basically a startup whisperer for deep tech, can't I?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, you're tackling big problems in minerals, energy storage, and batteries, as I understand it. Now, when we talk about climate solutions, everyone loves the buzzword, right? I mean, we talk about batteries, critical mineral storage. These sound more like avengers of the climate tech world to the normal people, if you think about it, or maybe to the people who are working in it. But it is very important to understand for the audience if they're actually, as you put it, saving the day, or are we just mining our way to more problems? So before we get into the nitty-gritty, before we begin, what's something people would be surprised to know about you, Lucas? Can you share something personal?
About me? What to say? I'd say that maybe I wanted to do movies.
No way, really?
In the start, yeah. And for some reason it got me into science.
That is a very interesting.
That's how things happened, because I was getting interested in the light, and I started to do physics to be able to join light schools that teach you how to manage light with the ambition to do movies, but through a technical angle, rather than a pure artistic angle. And it got me into science, and I was already interested by science before, but it got me into science studies, and I kind of never left since. I still love movies though, but I don't produce them.
That is the coolest story I've heard so far, that movies got you into technology. climate tech, basically.
Yeah, it's sometimes the paths are not written in advance.
Right. It's like somebody finding their favorite playlist by accident, but yours is better. All right, let's get into the good stuff. Batteries and minerals. Now, this is the combo or combination everyone is banking on to solve the climate crisis. I mean, you see in France itself, there are a large amount of startups that are focused on it. And our favorite Elon Musk is also working on the same problem. So, Lucas, let's really start with the big picture. What are the key trends you're seeing right now in the battery technology in minerals? What's hot and what's not so hot? And do not hesitate to explain things to us like we are 5-year-olds.
Yeah, I think it's good to take a step back. And so basically, one of the main way to develop the energy transition and have climate action is to have more sustainable sources of energy. Energy is at the basics, is at the base of every activity. So we need to decarbonize basically energy. Today we're using mainly fossil fuels and among them oil, the biggest energy source right now. And so to do that, we need to electrify the way we do. So that's what's happening. We're electrifying cars and we're electrifying a lot of things. So that's why we're also developing renewables, because we source this electricity in a cleaner way, I would say. But to this massive electrification, which is the way to go toward net zero, and if it's relying on renewables, then you have a reliability problem. You have an issue when you miss when you don't have sun, when you don't have wind, when you have troubles, there is intermittency. And so to address that, you can have several ways. You can have another source of energy, or you can store it, because basically the peak of production of renewables is around midday. For sunlight, it's when, it's at the top. For wind, it's a bit different, it changes, but basically you have a peak of production morning and midday, more or less. But you have a peak of consumption early morning when everybody wakes up, and you have the biggest peak of consumption during the day, classically, is around 7 p.m. more or less, when everybody's coming home, more or less. And especially when everybody will be plugging his electric car, So as you have a mismatch between production and consumption, you need a way to smooth that. And that's where storage comes in. So you store your excess to consume later. And that's where energy storage is for. It's also here so that's the energy storage on the grid side. So just for the energy system. And you also have all the batteries for cars and our smartphones. And so today we can't live without batteries anymore. So today we have one big type of battery, which is classically called lithium ion, and there are some issues with them. We'll probably go into the geopolitics a bit later, but just on the technical side of things, it's degrading a lot. If you have your iPhone, basically, after 2 years, the battery is going down much faster than it used to. And so after cycles of charge, discharge, the quality of the battery decreases. And so that's not good if you want to think long-term stuff, especially for your car. It's basically, the size of your tank decreases with time. So it's not good. And also there are safety problems related to lithium ion. There is a risk of fire and stuff like that. We remember the case of, can I quote some?
Absolutely.
Some brands? Some brands?
Okay.
Go
ahead.
You had Samsung phones at some point were exploding,
Oh my God,
at the
yes, I
face of
remember
the
that.
people. Yeah, it's linked to the batteries, if I'm not mistaken. So and sometimes we have cases of buses having going to fire because it's a complex thing, and so there are safety risks. And then we have also global supply chain threats. All of this makes that we need new technologies, we need new ways to produce batteries, and that's where the trends come in. So we have basically companies working in every step of the value chain. We have the biggest trend now is about developing new type of batteries, so providing new chemistries, so next generation batteries that we could consider better lithium ion or just non-lithium ion, zinc, metal, air, whatever. There are a lot of them. And you have also a growing trend on the recycling of batteries. Instead of just producing, we can also recycle. So circularity is a big trend technologically. And finally, also on the upstream and the beginning of the value chain, we have a growing technology trend, I would say, on if we think a bit long term, on new ways to extract minerals from other sources or in a much more sustainable way, because mining today is quite a dirty business. So yeah, those are the big trends. So from upstream to downstream of the value chain, there is a lot of breakthroughs being developed right now.
No, that's pretty cool. What that reminded me of two things. The first time when you were mentioning the intermittent nature of electricity in general, renewable energy and needing batteries. I think in California, you call it the duck curve because it's kind of shaped like the duck. And with the ascent of battery farms, they've been able to level the duck curve over the years. There is very interesting data on it. Like I recently worked on a white paper on this, which is why I remember the duck curve. It's pretty cool. And the second thing you were mentioning about Samsung batteries, I remember being quite young when the story had come out, like a Samsung battery phone had blasted or something, like had a minor blast on an airplane. I'm not sure, I'll have to check that, but the battery usually swells up and it just goes kaboom.
Yeah, so it shows you the difficulty, and just that today we are more or less relying on one type of battery, one chemistry, essentially being produced in China. So you also have dependency over one country. So that creates a lot of, and it's imperfect. It's technology that is far from perfect. It's relatively cheap. That's why it scaled a lot. But so, we really need some solutions and some improvements and also sometimes disruptions.
Lucas, now you worked with startups in this space quite a bit. And what do you think, what are the key things that they're definitely nailing? What do they usually struggle with? What do they stumble upon? Give me the highlight reel of the moments.
Startups are really good. First, they're addressing the whole value chain. So what they're nailing is that they're able to answer to a very specific problem that has a big implication for the industry. And they can laser focus on it and really provide something. We also have startups that are developing the breakthrough. It solves many problems at the same time. So it's very stimulating and it's really amazing to see what they're able to produce, the technology they're able to make. The trouble is when you reach the market. So it's hard we can't be very generalized to every company, etc. But the problem I see personally is that battery is a big business. It's a business at scale, right? Your customers, they will want scale. If your customer is a big, let's say, a grid utility project owner, or if it's a car manufacturer, you can do some piloting, you can do some stuff, it's cool. But in the end, you will be profitable and you will become a big company if you get the big contract, talking about probably hundreds of thousands or millions of cars. And so that's where it's hard, because the technology might seem amazing at small scale, but then at large scale, you have a lot of different issues that come with to industrialize the solution, etc. Sometimes this is not being thought in advance, and then you have problems. It's very hard to industrially scale something from scratch. Sometimes the equipment doesn't exist, or you have to build a lot of stuff. You have to build the value chain around. So
do you have specific examples?
Yeah, sure. Well, also what I wanted to say is that sometimes startups don't understand that the value they propose is not the one that will fit the market. For instance, you have a battery with better performances. Okay, great. But customers today, they have something with a performance that is matching what they want at a very big scale at a very cheap price. You can come with better performance, but why is it going to buy it? So, some startups understand that, and maybe they're playing more on the safety part or on the price or on the supply chain issues. So and that's really targeting the right value proposition sometimes is what they don't manage to do, and it's tough and it changes also over time. But I think that's that. If you want an example at scale, so we don't have so much actually in Europe. The only big story that we have right now is the NorthVolt. So NorthVolt brought back the idea to have large-scale production in Europe of industrial products, and that's a big change, or it's a shift in thinking. What do we do in Europe? And it's coming back to the basics, which is actually the product that we consume. That was a big, and that's why they attracted so much funds, and it was really part of a global movement to relocalize the production. But for various reasons, they are failing, or at least they are close to being very down. So, and that's an example, a lot of lessons to learn from them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. With everything happening in the space, do you think we're moving fast enough to address the climate crisis from the transportation point of view, or are we just running in circles trying to figure it out at the moment?
Well, that's a big topic. Are we moving fast enough? No. Everybody is aware of that. Could we move faster? Yes. It's easier to say, but no, I won't say we do enough. Now it's a problem that involves multiple factors, and first of it being political. So on my side, my perception is it's much more on the political side that things can really move, when you can move things around. And then people and industry will probably follow.
What kind of political aspects are you looking at? What do we need basically to be able to move at a pace that is acceptable in this space?
Well, are you mentioning climate or batteries?
Either.
In general.
In general? Well, climate, but related to the battery technology that can help us shift better to renewable energy. So I think it's all connected for me at the moment, but with the backbone of the current topic at hand.
Well, there's a lot of topics here. It's hard to make a general statement, but if you take the case of Europe, the main problem is that we don't own the value chain around it. And so we are very dependent, especially towards China, but not only. Politically, the idea is to have an ambition to remaster the production because we can develop it for ourselves. It is there, but it is to come with not just political objectives, but a strong implementation, declination of it through incentives. So what is missing today is not much the ambition, it's more the fast and straightforward implementation. We have said that, but we need to go now, and we need to do it and implement at different levels, European, country, etc. So we miss that action that comes with it. On the regulation side, I mean, there are some stuff that can foster, but it's really the implementation that is missing after the talk.
Absolutely, that's a great point of view. I think we're in similar waters in terms of decarbonizing the iron and steel industry, because most of the value chain or most of the world's production comes from China again. So to be able to move to, for example, DRI systems, it's important for Europe to foster those factories as well. And we're doing quite a bit in that terms, but that's another topic altogether. I moved the topic from energy and battery to iron and steel for a later time. But how about we make this a little fun? We're going to play a game right now, and it's busting certain myths or controversies within this. I'll mention some, but if I'm missing out any myth or controversies within this section, let me know. Okay? Are you ready?
Yeah.
So I'll throw a statement at you. You can tell me whether it's fact or fiction or somewhere in between, and then drop some knowledge to back it up. Ready? Okay,
Sure.
Cool. Batteries are the ultimate solution to climate change. And no, I'm not Elon Musk, but batteries are the ultimate solution to climate change.
Fiction, because there is not an ultimate solution to climate change. It is part of a global solution that is also not just a matter of technology. So I am not a technologist. I am, I'm an analyst of technologies. They are necessary, but there are technologies. So, we can make a lot of batteries to do interesting stuff, and it will have an impact on climate. So fiction.
Yeah, it's basically having a gym buddy, right? They're super helpful, but you're still gonna need to eat your greens or drink your water.
Then when you come back home, it's up to you. So it's what we do with it. If we use so much storage to do not interesting work, it's not very useful in the end.
Because you touched on the subject a little bit, I'm very inclined to mention this as a myth or not a myth. Europe is losing the battery race. Are we losing the battery race, Lucas?
For now, it seems so. We have lost milestones in the battery race because we lacked prospective mindset and anticipation 10, 15 years ago. So we are late. That's why now we're trying to catch up. We're trying to build gigafactories with the mindset of a Chinese or the US, which we don't really have. But so we missed something. Now we try to copy the guys who are leading the race.
Right.
And I think it's a second mistake, personally.
Yeah.
But that's a personal point of view. Or somehow losing the race now. Now the race is wrong, So it's not over. It's just about what do we do now that it's like, okay, they scored a goal, but the game's not over.
I was going to ask something else, but I just want to have a quick follow-up here. What mindset can Europe have, which is different from the US or China, according to you? Since you seem to feel so strongly about this, I would love to know what we could be, and I'm counting me as a European at the moment, what could we be doing differently to ace the race?
I think it's up to the Europeans collectively to answer that. But for instance, we have different regulatory, environmental standards, economic standards. So first, my opinion would be to develop products, not just trying to compete with the product the world is going to buy, but maybe build products that because we are one of the biggest market, we can do that. We can build products that are in line with our standards, because you also need to be competitive. But that's the first thing. And we need to reflect on what really do we want, what kind of products do we want. And I think on a more strategic level, I think Europe can bet on different things. First of all, circularity. It's something that is more developed, I would say, at least philosophically. Here, and something that we can take advance. It's still costly and stuff, but we could potentially leading in that way, or not let other ones become leaders, which will solve some problems we could have there. We could develop products that will be primarily sold in Europe, that will be where we have basically regional favoritism and protectionism on this project. That's some stuff that we could do that today are not really considered, because they are considered as anti-liberal or stuff like that, but that China and the US are doing. We have to be a bit more realistic in that sense. And so that's the different stuff that we can do. And then what I support in my everyday job is what's up, not today, not just tomorrow, but after tomorrow, It's reflecting on what will be the batteries and just the technology in 10, 15 years. And that is still unknown, and we can still bet on these ones to maybe become leaders of what will be key in 15 years. And there will be for sure other kind of batteries, other kind of storage, other kind of use cases. And we have very strong research. We have very brightful minds, so we can bet on that too. There's various ways that can be done.
Yeah.
It can be achieved that Europe has its own, singularity or vision.
Glad you feel so strongly about this, because when we feel strongly about certain topics, we're more likely to make a difference, I think. So congratulations on the line of work that you actually did.
Well, I think there's a global waking up in Europe. A report from Mario Draghi 1 month ago, I think, was kind of alarming. But we can feel that in Europe there is a lot of people starting to really think that way and being a bit more. And I'm part of this. I'm just one part of this big movement, supported by different kind of figures, just not following one big vision, but developing an alternative narrative. And so, I'm sure it will grow. Now it's also the same thing. It's about really implementing it and having the right political figures also that support it. So the future will tell.
I also want to touch the subject of NorthVolt here. It seems appropriate. Let's talk about what happened there and what it means for Europe's battery future. Anything you can share on that line would be great.
Well, first of all, it's not because they failed that it's dead. They brought a lot of things.
Absolutely.
They will bring that. This story will bring a lot of also of knowledge, of lessons. It brought back the idea that we can build factories at large scale in Europe for this kind of product. So in that sense, for instance, we could consider it a victory. because it put at the center of the debate. The reason why they got down, I will just repeat what I've seen in the press.
Absolutely. Go
Basically,
ahead.
it's not. I was not there, but basically, I think they probably tried to scale too fast and put on the side certain problems.
What kind of
And at some
problems?
point, I think it was more problem related to the feasibility of the scale of production. Once again, I was not there in the production line, so I can't really say. I'm just repeating what was shared in the press. Trying to scale too fast, like jumping and not doing all the milestones is from it's what has been said. Really relied on one equipment supplier, and that was a problem in the end. So it shows again the problem of being dependent on one actor, on one thing. If there is a problem with this, the whole machine goes down. I think it highlights also the question of
Yeah.
talent because their first big production facility was like in north of Sweden, super far, super snowy, and it's hard to attract so many bright minds there, secluded kind of. I know some startup advisors or mentors that always also advise to relocate
Yeah.
in attractive places for international
Yeah.
talent. Because if you're lost in somewhere, some place, people now can move a lot. There's a lot of opportunities around the world for talents, and so there's a war on talent. So you sort of need to be attractive in there, and so yeah, all of these factors. But I think people who have worked at NorthVolt will share much better and will have more deeper insights.
No, absolutely. There's so many things that need to work in tandem for one thing to go
Yeah.
correctly. You're very right in that matter. But also for the audience a little bit here, maybe given your background, you can shed some light on what NorthVolt actually did and how are they different a little bit to give them some perspective.
Yeah, well, they released more than 10 years ago. They said we're going to build gigafactories to produce batteries in Europe, and that was like a waking up somehow. They attracted a lot of funds. They secured very big partnerships, mainly with I think BMW, who was then a shareholder. Need to be fact checked, but they had a very big contract.
Yeah.
So they achieved to really put that into place. And being a very big manufacturer, they had plans on recycling, on a lot of stuff, but unfortunately it didn't go as planned. When you scale really big, you need a very big amount of money.
Yeah.
And if you don't spend it well and you don't deliver at time, then there is a big problem. And it's hard to re-raise because we're talking hundreds of millions now.
Absolutely.
We're talking more than €1 billion. So yeah, you need to deliver at some point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of funding pressure in this industry, supply chain bottlenecks, like you mentioned. And I think there's some element from your previous things that you mentioned about geopolitical and competitive pressure here. I think mostly because of the IRA in the US that offers like huge subsidies for battery production. So pulling investment and
well, not just battery. The Inflation Reduction Act is a very big move that was made by Biden to attract climate-related technologies to also help the US to take a leadership. So that's a threat for the EU. Maybe Trump will kill it. We don't know. It will probably reduce in certain areas. It will probably not kill everything because the economic war on this topic has started. And so he will have to. A few weeks ago, China announced that they will ban the export of critical minerals to the US. I think it was germanium, gallium, and another one that are part of not so much batteries, but a lot of low carbon tech and including like defense, military technologies. So that is a very big illustration on the tensions that come with the needs of minerals. They are the heart of the transition, but also therefore they are the heart of the tensions and the potential wars, where they're economic or military. And so that's where technology might come to help that.
That is such a fascinating aspect. It's so important to understand one subject with so many different facets. I think that's why I love having these conversations. But also I feel Asian battery giants like BYD and Cattle, I don't know how you pronounce that, CATL.
Yeah, I think it's CATL. BYD is more of a car manufacturer. BYD, what is different is that they own the value chain of the car manufacturer.
Right.
And that's crazy. Nobody does that in Europe.
No, but
up to my knowledge.
Yeah, no, they have similar facilities for their iron and steel industries as well. I think you're able to maintain, if you improve your standards on all levels of your value chain, I think that helps better forward your agenda towards a better circularity or sort of climate tech. It's better for sustainability reporting as well, as I understand it now, with EU laws requiring you to submit your sustainability reports for upstream and downstream value chain, as I understand it, right?
Yeah, well, once again, we don't have to also copy what
Yeah.
has been done in China and, okay, let's do another BYD,
Yeah.
because we tried to do another CATL and it
Yeah.
failed. You might not want to do another BYD. The question is that what really is a threat and how do you solve it? Personally, I don't really believe in the idea of becoming over dominant because we have an interconnected economy. What I believe personally is more about being dependent enough to one another that we reach stability. This stability is a bit broken now because Europe has more or less a market, but cannot so much impose trade war or impose sanctions or, like China just did toward the US for clear economy, or at least France. I don't want to speak for the entire EU, but France can impose trades on wine and some other stuff. So it's not going to change the geopolitics of the world. But, so we might not want to do another BYD, but we have to find the right thing.
Yeah.
For instance, they want to transform cars into electric vehicles.
Right.
And so we are doing big electric vehicles in cities that are
Mm-hmm.
hard to practice with vehicles.
Yeah.
You can do big vehicles in China and the US. They have big avenues with a lot, but try that in Napoli. Try that in Paris. You can still do it. How do we move in our own space, in our own urbanism? And maybe you have mobility solutions that are different. Maybe you have more car sharing, or maybe you have more what we call the light mobility, lighter vehicles. Maybe we have more and more cities that are forbidding the use of cars in the city center. For instance, I think Madrid is in that place, so not a small city, right? Big capital cities. Paris is thinking about it. So how do we do there? Do we still sell big electric cars, or do we rethink it? But if we rethink it, and let's say that we have more mobility sharing solutions, then we don't produce the same product, right? So we don't need the same supply, and then we build more resilience, and we are stronger. It's harder to push us to our limit. So you see, it's this whole approach that needs to be fitting with your regional or geographical situation that change. So yeah, maybe it's not interesting to do another BYD. Maybe it is. It will really depend on your specific situation.
Okay, I have one last question to ask about a myth or a controversy. It's more a controversy than a myth. It's more an ethics question. So we're gonna shift that towards the end and move to the section of the podcast that I love the most, which is together we try to quantify the impact and why. Give the people a reason why they need to be worrying about this, why they need to talk about this, and how is this getting us closer to the net zero 2050 goals.
Sure. Let's go.
Right. So I loved the last point you were mentioning, especially about the different ways we can advance. We don't have to completely adopt the BYD model, for example, but transportation was a major topic that you mentioned as well. Transportation accounts for 7.3 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually, which is closer to being 14% of global emissions if we count 51 billion tons as what we're releasing annually. EV-powered vehicles basically clean electricity. It can reduce emissions by 70% or so over their life cycle. Wouldn't you agree?
Maybe I can go a bit of a myth busting here.
Okay, absolutely.
It's one of my favorite one. Electric vehicles are not clean by nature. Electric vehicles are cleaner than oil-based vehicles if they are used in a sufficient time, are run by clean electricity. Those are the two conditions which are already some of the time not fulfilled. So I think a big take I want to share to anyone is that climate tech or sustainable, green, whatever technology is not green or sustainable by essence. There is a lot of misconception about what is more sustainable or not. For instance, tote bags are not very sustainable.
Exactly. I love that.
They use cotton, they use water, they use pesticides, I mean, whatever. So it's not better because it's like that, okay? Because it's not what we consider not
Right.
clean. But that being said, electric vehicles with light batteries that are not 2 tons with clean electricity can drastically reduce over time if they are used well. They can drastically reduce, the CO2 emissions of road transport. So it depends on the size of your battery, the size of your car, how you use the battery, etc., and how decarbonized is your electric grid. But usually it's between at least 30, 50,000 kilometers before you reach CO2 parity.
Yeah.
Which is, it's okay. I mean, a lot of people use more than 50,000 kilometers before they change cars. But some people change cars every 2 years,
Oh my God, it's like the new iPhone,
Yeah.
right? Getting a new iPhone every time it comes
Yeah, yeah, because the commercial is good and they can afford it, and or maybe they have another kid and now they need a bigger car. I
Yeah.
don't know. Or they're going more into the countryside and they need two cars because they have, two different areas where they work. But if you don't cross this, then you have something that was not more sustainable. So what needs to be changed is more how you consume. Electric vehicles are more sustainable if you respect these conditions. So people who have Teslas in Texas is catastrophe for this, because the production of the car was more carbon emitting, and the usage of the car is very emitting because a big part of Texas electricity is from fossil fuels. I think they have a big improvement on solar, but it's still far from
Absolutely.
from being decarbonized. So you have a double bad impact, but it's called sustainable, right? They have subsidies for green product, so
It's greenwashing,
that's something
basically.
else.
No, I really love that you
Yeah.
clarified this thing here. The conditions are very necessary to understand the maximum impact we talked about is coming from. For example, when Lucas says clean electricity, he means electricity that's not produced by fossil fuels, like you already mentioned, for example, how it's done in Texas, but by renewable sources like solar, or can we consider hydro as well in clean electricity?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. It's one of the cleanest, yeah.
I was also considering, so for example, in continents like Africa, where building of dams, or even in India, where building of dams can result in displacement of people. So there is another aspect that you need to add to the conversation there.
Now every source of energy will have an impact. I think people need to understand is that you don't have like a dirty and clean. That is a black and white vision that is far from reality. Always have an impact. Solar panels have an impact because you have people in the mines that need to take it. You have refining of minerals that is polluting the environment. You have a lot of implications. Wind turbines have also implications on the local biodiversity. Hydro dams also have an impact on biodiversity.
Exactly.
They have an impact on you perturbate the natural cycle of things. And nuclear, well, they have its own problem, right? So it's not dirty or clean. Our goal is just to make the cleanest possible, basically.
It's cleaner.
Now I prefer to use low carbon technology. Yeah, it's a bit better because clean or even cleaner kind of like makes you feel it's
pure.
clean.
Yeah, I love that term. Thank you, Lucas.
Yeah, for instance, wind turbines today cannot really be recycled. So there are 15, 20, 25, maybe more years of production. Sometimes usually more, but it depends. It depends, on the weather, etc. So, but today we can't really recycle because the way the blades are made, composite material, right, of carbon fibers and other stuff. Let's say schematically that they are bound very hard together to have something strong but also flexible and light. So today we can't really recycle them. It's very costly and it's polluting because you need to use strong chemicals, right? So we miss a clean technology here for the recycling, and some of them are buried. So there are places where we bury underground hundreds of blades, so this is not sustainable.
Yeah, no, very true. Which is why it's very important to quantify the impact that you're having, either positive or negative, and go for the maximum positive impact any technology has. So for example, let's say we're following all the conditions of using an EV-powered vehicle. We're not doing it in Texas. So considering that transportation costs to like 15% of global emissions.
It's probably even more.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's quite true. Let's consider 15%,
Sure.
and if everything is clean within the value chain in the production, if you're using clean electricity, and over the life cycle, it's able to reduce emissions by 70%. That's still close to having 9.8, 10, almost 10% of reducing overall 51 billion tons that we need to be able to reduce by 2015, and that's a huge amount.
Yeah. And you're just considering transport,
Yeah.
but batteries and energy storage also have a big impact on the grid, as I was, explaining the
Absolutely.
intermittency. So that's indirect, so it's a bit hard to calculate. I mean, it's a central technology in the energy transition. Or without it, we can't do
No,
it.
absolutely. I think International Energy Agency, if I remember correctly, had their report that scaling energy storage could eliminate close to 2.5 billion tons of carbon dioxide by 2030. So they were, and I absolutely blindly trust International Energy Agency. It's a good source to have. And now, if we're talking about 2.5 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually by 2030, that represents close to 3 to 5% of global emissions, which again is a huge amount. And this is just talking about scaling energy storage. So it absolutely blows my mind when we talk about the potential here and we sit down to actually put numbers on things, because the overall end goal is to be able to reach net zero by 2050. It's the maximum. It's like you're in a game where you're trying to catch as many percentage as possible. Even consider a tempo run, right? Like it's
Every ton matters.
exactly every ton matters, and it's nicer to be able to target, I think, the areas with a good percentage impact, because overall what people try to shift conversation to is individual impact and individual carbon footprint, which absolutely, and I mentioned this several times, it gets my goat that people keep talking about. Well, you ate meat that one time, so you're obviously not, you're harming the planet. No. Valid points and a certain right, sure. But the point is, the focus needs to be on a more global level. We need to have this conversation in terms of institutional impact, in terms of governmental impact, and in terms of like the biggest polluting industries and the biggest sort of sectors we can actually move the needle.
Yeah, well, it's a big topic. It's a big topic of debate. I won't say that individual action is not important. I think it's important. Also,
Definitely.
it drives your consumption. If you stop buying big cars, maybe they will stop producing big cars. If you stop buying meat, honestly, it will be better for the environment. We won't lie. Now you have culture, you have also cultural stuff, etc. But I think it's both, and they should not be opposed, basically. Or you're individual or you're collective political. Personally, I think that strong political action can have faster and bigger impact than fighting for each one of us to take this at the personal level. It won't work. So I think it's really about, not opposing the two, but make them complementary. And don't blame if people are not perfect. Is the same. We have the same big debate that is a bit stupid around pro-technology or anti-technology. So some people say that technology is going to save the world, which doesn't mean anything. And we have people who are going to say that technology is killing the world and that we need to plant trees. I'm being very caricatural here, but both are stupid. They are both stupid. It's about connecting the two. When we need technology, for instance, providing low carbon electricity, we need technology. But when we want to say, okay, how much is my country going or my city is going to spend energy, for instance, I don't know, lighting the street or what kind of district heating for my city do I want? Maybe you can also be sober and have less basically energy requirements for the same amount of comfort, right? So being sober is very important, but it's the combination of both that makes something working. It's not the one or the others. That's at least what we are thinking at Hello Tomorrow. We are not super pro tech. I'm a very big skeptic person about AI, for instance, but it's just about, it's a combination of where we go as a technology point of view and what we do with it. If you oppose things, it's very It's unhealthy,
Yeah,
honestly.
no, I totally agree with your point there. Things need to work in tandem, which is what I wanted
Hmm.
to highlight, because most of the discussions with most of the people starts and ends with individual contribution, and it just ends there. And I'll make a comparison to destroying the Death Star, for example, in Star Wars. You really need to have 100 things go and work in tandem in the right order with the right priority to be able to succeed in the mission of destroying the Death Star. And it's almost like that. You can't just have one thing. You can't have just like Luke flying like a freaking master to be able to destroy the Death Star. I don't know if you follow the Star Wars.
Yeah, well, for me, yeah, it's a very American way of sharing things. You mentioned Elon Musk before,
Yeah.
like, oh, we have this one thing and it will change the
Yeah.
world. It's a bit more
Oh no,
complex.
100%. It's very Americanized. So you have to pardon me for Americanizing things a little bit. It's the cultural assimilation or something.
No, but it's fine. It's fine. In Europe, sometimes we miss the communication aspect
Yeah,
too. We need to sell this thing. We need to put up a
yeah,
vision and embark people in this
yeah,
vision. That's also how you trigger action and you trigger also a movement. It's something that we could honestly borrow from the Americans in our own
yeah,
way once again.
yeah, absolutely. I think overall, if we consider everything going in line, the quantity of impact that has to be had here in terms of, for example, expanding the energy storage alone, or even if you consider solar plus storage and the impact that solar plus storage again has on the continent of Africa, that's it's amazing. It's huge. It's a higher percentage. It goes beyond 5% of reducing the total emissions that we discussed earlier. And the same goes with like using EV transport that has been produced, I wouldn't say ethically, but in a better manner, in a cleaner, low carbon way. I'm using your terminology here, which again has an impact of close to 10%, like we discussed earlier. So, no, thank you for having this conversation about quantifying the impact. The question that I'd saved for later, if you don't mind, was more related to ethics. And if you let me ask it, so again, in that mode of controversy, mining for battery materials is too unethical to justify the benefits. If this was a blanket statement, if this was like a controversial statement, and I like that I posted right after quantifying the impact, what would you say?
That's a tough one. I think it's hard to compare environmental benefit to a social ethics problem. So how do you compare which, if it's beneficial or not? However, definitely the mining industry causes ethical problems, mainly because of child labor. I mean, we estimate that there's around 1 million child in mines around the world,
Did not
more or
know
less,
that was that high.
Yeah, it's about 1 million.
Wow.
Probably under 18, I would say. Let's consider them child,
Yeah.
even if some are teenagers, but people are minor. So yeah, it's a lot and it's a big problem. It's also related to the fact that it's highly concentrated. We don't have much leverage right now. For instance, so nickel is very important in battery manufacturing
Yeah.
today, but in other applications, today it's more than 60% of the extraction that is made in
Right.
Indonesia. Indonesia is it's the biggest actor by
Yeah.
far. It will probably stay like that for quite some time. So what can you say? You need nickel. You can ask Indonesia to, I don't know how the mines are there. I don't want to say bad
Uh-huh.
things, but everywhere in the world it's
Right.
complicated anyway. But so that's also maybe partly why it's not in Western countries
Yeah.
anymore. You need nickel for stuff. What can you do to
Yeah.
force it to change? You will need a global sanctions around that, but everybody needs the product, so it's not going to
Yeah.
happen. I understand the ethical questions. Now, on the realistic point of view, it's difficult to
Mhm.
act. I think what is important, my answer to that would be that, if Western countries who are so
Mhm.
preoccupied by ethical questions, they should bring back the mining on their soil, which is something I would advocate
Yeah.
for personally, and it is in discussions right now. because we can't, not because of ethical questions, but because we are dependent on countries, more for geopolitical questions. And then we would have more control. We would have been probably more traceability, and it would be better. What we can act also is that there are other ways of extracting that we can develop. I have deep tech companies in my network and in Hello Tomorrow's community. We have companies really addressing this topic.
Wow.
So that we don't have to go and digging super deep. So there's also technologies for that to answer that topic.
Yeah. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's starting to grow.
Yeah.
We have companies who try to mine without excavate.
How does that work? How does that technology work?
Well, there are different. First, today we mine from rocks, basically. For instance, lithium is mined from salar brines mainly, in Bolivia, Argentina, Chile. Not only, but also there. And so traditionally, we mine from rock, right? So you can also mine from other sources. For instance, processed water from oil fields and other industrial processes require treatment, chemical treatment, and in this processed water that is usually costly to take care of because it's hazardous, etc. You have some high concentration of metals sometimes, especially in processed water of oil field. You have technologies that are extracting these metals, these minerals from the process, from the wastewater.
Yeah.
So here we have a form of circularity also, or it's just a co-production of something that used to be a waste and now it's a resource. That's one thing. There are others, like we have companies who use biotechnology enzymes that dissolve rock and that extract minerals.
From the first technology that you mentioned, what percentage are we able to get compared to normal mining? Like I can't imagine it's going to be that high a percentage, is it?
But you can mine as much. It's just you don't dig as much. You don't take out as much material. Oh, you mean in the
total...
the water? Yeah. Well, it depends on the minerals, but for some that we don't have such a high needs in terms of tons, for instance, lithium has a supply problem because the demand will increase enormously in the future years, and so we don't have enough supply probably. But if you look at the amount of tons that we need every year is low compared to iron or aluminium. It's very low.
Okay.
So in various minerals, alternative sources are enough at least to cover the supply gap.
Right. Okay. That is super cool.
Like you need to look case by case, mineral by mineral. Every processed water, every brine, every facility will have a different concentration. Will have a different. There are challenges related to that, but it's doable, and some are starting to do it.
Wow. That is so cool. I love that you get the opportunity to work with hundreds of startups. It helps you look at the future as well. You get to see the trends. So Lucas, as we're nearing to the end of the conversation, what's the next big breakthrough you think we'll see in this space? Is it solid-state batteries? Is it battery recycling tech, like you mentioned a little bit about the water, or something we haven't even imagined yet?
Okay, good one. There are several. I think if we look at more 10, 15 years, I think we can expect completely different batteries than what we have now. What is the chemistry used? What is the design? How do we manufacture them? So we can bet on very different ways of batteries, much more recyclable, right? So that would be my first one. So lot of new type of batteries adapted to a lot of different situations. Today we have kind of like one tech for every application. We can expect batteries that are much more suiting a smartphone use. Maybe they're more expensive, but the phone is expensive and it's not such a big battery, so it makes sense. Maybe on an EV it will not make sense because you need like a 500 kilo battery and that will make sense. So, but this one, it works for a smartphone or for a specific thing. But for EV, we'll have another one, and for the grid, we will have other ones. So I think we can expect diversification, more adaptability. And I would say that we can expect, and I hope for, complete disruption of the mining business. So on the supply chain, that it would be my big, this is more like a 15, 20 years perspective because these things take a lot of time to develop. Just going someplace, prospecting, excavating, taking out, 1 kilo of mineral for 100 kilo of processed mineral. For me, this will be the past soon.
Okay.
At least I hope it will really deploy. There is also a bit of conservatism here,
Okay.
but that's something we can expect.
Okay. No,
Definitely.
that is super cool. Thank you for sharing that. If you had any advice for startups and investors, what should they be tracking in terms of metrics? What kind of metrics really show that they're making progress in this space and this direction? Not only batteries, but just energy storage in general, or within sort of the EV space as well, if you wanted to include that.
Yeah, I think my advice will not be specific to batteries or anything. It's more in deep tech in
Okay.
general. Investors, I would advise them to hire scientists to understand the technology, but deeply.
Mhm.
Not just understand what it means and okay, it's plus 20% minus, but really understand the
Yeah.
core. Because investors, they want to know if this thing can scale, and you need to understand the core of the tech to anticipate if you have problems in the future. And usually you can't anticipate them, but at least you have a better understanding. So
Right.
in the due diligence, please ask PhDs in that field. That will save you some troubles, probably. And for companies, I think it's kind of the same advice. Any deep tech is that what matters is the product, and going from lab to market is a very difficult task.
Right.
And going from market to large scale industrialization is even more difficult. So I think the idea is to have the end goal in mind and to have all your actions going in the direction of that end goal, which can be to be bought, or which can be to be the next, Tesla, or it can be to be whatever. But to have that in mind from the beginning and just work to make really a product to go on your customers, potential customers, and answer their problems, not just trying to do the best perfect tech with the most biggest performance and so you have the best publication. We don't care in deep tech so much. We just want product because we need them fast. My biggest advice would be really to focus on the product development, on the value that you bring to the people who will buy it in the end. And maybe also the PhD, the scientist will tell you, okay, but there is another group in the other part of the world that did something similar. It's going to give you more perspective, where this research comes from, what problems is it really solving, how is it resolving it, maybe it works at lab scale, but trust me, at higher scales, it won't.
For sure. Lucas, thank you so much. This has been a blast. Thank you for breaking this all down. I think we've proven here that batteries aren't the hero we thought we needed, but they're definitely a sidekick we can't do without. It's the Robin to someone's Batman, I'm not sure. But to everyone listening, if you've enjoyed today's conversation, please feel to follow and subscribe to Climate Conversations with Divya for more talks like this one, and keep following these topics. And Lucas, any last words of wisdom before we sign off?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for giving the mic and for this work also. And I love that you're not afraid to do myth busting or ask controversial topics. Sometimes it's a bit hard to answer, but it's a strong, and I think we need it. Deep tech used to be very lab scale, crazy science things. Today it's a scaling story. It's going mainstream. We're going to see a lot of great evolutions in the coming years. So there is a long story to write. We don't need just scientists to do it. We need so many talent, from communication to branding to business to marketing to industrial development so it requires such a big ecosystem that we need everyone. And I think it's bringing back also much more power and influence of scientists. And that's something I really wish for, because we are in an era of craziness and irrationality. And with deep tech, we are bringing back a bit more rationality in this space. So join us in the deep tech.
That is definitely amazing. Before we sign off, to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to Climate Conversations with Divya. Subscribe to anywhere where you get your podcasts and keep following these big topics with us. This has been amazing. Thank you so much, Lucas, for joining in.
Thank you, Divya.
You just heard Climate Conversations with Divya, brought to you by Purple Figs Productions. We hope today's episode sparked new ideas and deeper curiosity about how we can tackle climate change together. Until next time, this is Climate Conversations with Divya. Stay curious, stay engaged, and let's shape a sustainable future together.